How's it going, guys? Welcome back. So in today's video, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Chicago Blackhawks, and in particular, just how bad I think this team is going to be, because I feel like it's no secret that the Hawks are going to be a pretty terrible team, especially after losing guys like DeBrincat, Strome, and Doc, and looking at their new top six with guys like Kurashev, Reichel, and Taylor Radish replacing those players, it really isn't looking all too promising. Of course, they still do have their savior in Patrick Kane, but they have literally stated that there's a 0% chance of Kane staying in the lineup by the time next year's trade deadline rolls around. So it really does get me wondering, are the Chicago Blackhawks in for a really long haul here, or do they have more of a plan than we might have thought? Now, don't get me wrong, I do think the Blackhawks have made some pretty questionable decisions these past couple weeks, especially that DeBrincat trade where I feel like they could have gotten a lot more for the guy. I mean, he's a 40-goal scorer, right? But even then, I think there's a reason for why they're doing all of this, and maybe they're trying to make their team as bad as possible for next season just to tank for Connor Bedard. Yes, guys, Connor Bedard, and if you don't know who it is, he is what they are calling the next Connor McDavid, the next generational talent to come out of a draft, and honestly, what better time to just completely destroy your team than the season before he is eligible into the draft. I think this is a perfect setup, and it really makes for what is going to be a disastrous season in the Chicago Blackhawks organization. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. Guys, thank you so much for all the recent support on these videos. I really appreciate it. Make sure those post notifications and like the video as well. And for question of the day in the comment section below, do you think the Chicago Blackhawks are doing all of these things on purpose to tank for Connor Bedard? Or do you think this is just a mishap from the GM and he just made some really bad decisions these past couple of weeks? I want to know your thoughts in the comment section below, because I feel like it's a pretty interesting discussion heading into next season, as, man, this team is not looking good at all. But anyways, without further ado, let's actually get right into this here. Let's actually talk about the Chicago Blackhawks lineup, because if you look at this right now and you think about what this team is going to look like on the ice next year, I think we could potentially be looking at a team that is even worse than the Arizona Coyotes of last season. Like, I think it's going to be that bad, if not worse. I mean, look at the first line. You have Philip Kurashev, Lucas Reichel, and Patrick Kane on that first line. And who knows how long Patrick Kane is going to be there before they actually decide to trade him. Second line, you have Tyler Johnson, Jonathan Taves, and Taylor Radish. Jonathan Taves is a bit of a washed player. I don't think he's nearly as good as, he was before he took that leave of absence for like a year and a half or whatever it was. Tyler Johnson, after leaving the Tampa Bay Lightning, just completely fell off the map. He's not that good anymore. And Taylor Radish, I mean, it's Taylor Radish, so what do you really expect there? The third line, you have Andre Athanasiou. He's actually a pretty good player. I think he will get bumped up to the top six. He's better than all these guys who I've already mentioned before, other than Kane, Taves. I think he's better than Tyler Johnson, so Athanasiou could definitely jump in that top six. Next up, we got Max Domi, and Max Domi is one of the most inconsistent players I've ever seen in the NHL. I mean, you don't know if the guy's going to have a 72-point pace season or a 23-point pace season. Like, it's either or. It's never in between. But, I mean, who knows? Maybe in an increased role with more time on the ice and perhaps even power play time, maybe Max Domi can flourish and become the player he was supposed to be. It's funny because I remember Max Domi was good on the Canadiens, and then he had that rough stint on Columbus where he was kind of shaky. And then I thought he completely fell off the map in Carolina. He scored like 2 goals in one playoff game. That was like the only thing I remember of him being there. And now he's on the Blackhawks, so we'll see how he does. Next up on that third line, we have Mackenzie Entwistle. All right, yeah, okay. This is funny now, because we're getting into the territory where it's players that, like, I don't even know who they are. It's not even like mediocre NHL players who, like, I'm like, yeah, I know who these guys are, but they're pretty bad. Like, we're getting into the point where these are legitimate AHL players who they brought up because I genuinely think they have no other options. I mean, same with Boris Katchouk. Who is Boris Katchouk? I've never heard of these guys. If you're a Blackhawks fan, you know these guys, like, let me know. But, man, like, who are these players? Colin Blackwell, I know who that is. Sam Lafferty, I've also heard his name before. But Mackenzie Entwistle, Boris Katchouk, even Lucas Reichel, I'm not too familiar with. But, I mean, whatever. It doesn't really matter, does it? The D pairings, on the other hand, are also pretty mediocre. I mean, on the first line, you have Alex Vlasic paired up with Seth Jones, who, Seth Jones, probably the most overrated defenseman in the NHL. Like, the guy's just not very good. Then you have Jake McCabe and Connor Murphy. You know what? Connor Murphy's actually pretty decent, same as Jake McCabe. Just like, they're all right. I mean, not great, but not terrible. And then the last line, you have Riley Stillman, don't know who that is, and Caleb Jones, Seth Jones' brother. So overall, pretty mediocre on the defense. Finally, let's look at this team's goaltending situation. So you have Peter Mrazek paired up with Arvid Soderblom. Peter Mrazek, fairly inconsistent. Sometimes he could be decent, sometimes he's just terrible. And then Arvid Soderblom, I'm not really too familiar with the guy, but yeah, that pretty much wraps up the Chicago Blackhawks and their lineup heading into the 2022-2023 NHL season. A dangerous core here, a force to be reckoned with, and it's going to be very funny to see how this team fares through an 82-game season and whether or not this is actually a plan. Because, I don't know if you guys knew this, but the Oilers have admitted years after drafting Connor McDavid that they did purposely lose and make themselves as bad as possible in order to tank for Connor McDavid. So, I think we're seeing something similar forming here with the Chicago Blackhawks. It is kind of smart. I think they could have done it in a bit of a better way by not getting rid of some of their young talent. But either way, if you're going to go all in for Connor Bedard, then by all means, you better do it the right way by just stripping your team down and ensuring that you get that first overall pick. Or not even the first overall pick, but just the odds to get the first overall pick. So, I think the Blackhawks will end up with one of Matvei Michkov or Connor Bedard. Because realistically, man, let's not kid ourselves here. This team is not going to be beating many NHL teams, many AHL teams for that matter, honestly. It's pretty sad. And Blackhawks fans, you had your fun winning, 3 cups in 6 years, but here comes the pain. So enjoy it, but Connor Bedard will most likely be on your team after next year's, what I feel is going to be a very depressing year. But yeah, man. Anyways, that's it for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think about the video, and I'll be sure to catch you guys all in the next one. Peace.